year, would you not allow us to be under any delusions or illusions that we can do life by ourselves? Don't allow us to be so arrogant to believe that we know enough to get through life. We know enough to survive on our own. God, maybe you're going to teach that lesson to us in some harsh ways in the upcoming year. Maybe you've already taught that to somebody here this morning, and maybe it hasn't been the most pleasant experience. But I pray that you would make this true in our minds and true in our hearts, that we truly do need you. Would you help us to realize that? Would you help us to realize the depths of your greatness, the depths of your power? The fact that your power is limitless, that your emotion is limitless, that your compassion is limitless, that there is no problem too big or too small that you can't handle it or care about it. That you worry, not that you worry, that you care about the big things in our life and even the small things. Lord, for those that are maybe in a moment of crisis where they're screaming this out, they're saying, God, I need you, I need you. Where are you? God, would you make yourself real to them today? God, I think of some of Andy's patients, Hannah Bryant, John Swisher, Kendall Bain. These are kids, truly kids that are maybe experiencing a moment of uncertainty and disbelief and misunderstanding of why in the world you would allow them to go through what they're dealing with. Why you would allow their bodies to become so infected with such a disgusting, awful disease. Would you help them to understand that they do need you? And that you're not only that you're there, that you want to be with them, you want to walk with them, keep a hand on their shoulder. Would you help us to realize that today? God, if we do nothing in 2015, help us to know that we need you. And help us to build our lives not around our jobs, not around just our families, not around the things that we want, but build our lives around you so that we can depend on you, so you can come through for us, so that you can show us how big and great and awesome you are. Would you help us to take some risks this year? Risks that will give you the opportunity to show how awesome you are. I'm so excited about the amazing things you're going to do in the life of Penn Forest Worship Center in the next year. I'm so excited about the people you're going to help us reach, the people you're going to bring into our lives, so that we can introduce them to your truth and your love, so that your world can experience how awesome you are. I pray that today would be a day we put a stake in the ground and say, Lord, I need you. From this moment on, I'm going to confess that I need you, that I can't do life without you. And I'm going to take risks and build my life around you today. We love you, Jesus, and we need you. Be with us now as we hear from your word, as Pastor Myron speaks over us and speaks a word to us. That you would make this real to us. You would speak to each and every individual here today. We love you, Jesus. Amen. Have a seat.
I'm thankful for doctors, nurses, people that work in the hospitals. But I'm even more thankful for those that have a heart for their patients, that go beyond just the spiritual or the physical, that go to the spiritual. And I know that we have some great people that work in the medical industry here at the church that care for the patients. And you know what? If I get sick or something like that, I would want to know that the people that are the medical professionals that are in this church, that there are people just like them that are taking care of me if I was in the hospital. Because when you see the tears, and you see the heartbreak as they grieve, as they pray for those individuals physically and spiritually, it means a lot. And so for those of you that are in the medical industry here, thank you for what you do. So, amen. Yeah, amen. All right, so here we are. We had Christmas this week, and a lot of people were able to open some gifts, watch grandkids open gifts or something like that. And you remember the day of which you were young and you looked forward to that time. As you get older, you still look forward to it, but in a different way. But there's a lot of work and planning that goes into the Christmas celebration. And in fact, the younger we are, and sometimes even old, we obsess about it. We are so obsessed and so consumed with it that we struggle even sleeping the night before, because we know there are presents under the tree. We know what's going to happen. We're going to get to open up those things, all the things that we've been hoping for. And it's not just Christmas. It could be one of a retreat, one of those high points in life spiritually that we encounter. Maybe it's a wedding day or some sort of banquet or anything like that. But since we just came through Christmas, after those monumentally high experiences, there's usually kind of a letdown. You open up the presents and then you get done and you look under the tree. Is there any more? Is this it? You're excited about what you got, but you want more. You're excited about the celebration and all the family and friends that were in, but they're gone. And now there's a letdown. For me, I remember I enjoy going to camp during the summer. And I've gone to summer camp for years. And the last 2 years, I've not gone to summer camp to work. And I've been pondering and toying with the idea, and I think I may have even said it to Mandy. If not, I thought about it. About wanting to go back and work at camp this summer, because it's one of those times that I really, really enjoy, of working at camp and being there. All the people, all the hype. I'm the outgoing person that could live in a commune, and Mandy's the person that would rather live in a woods, cabin in the woods, away from people. That's where she gets her source of strength so that she can come out then and be with people. I know others that are that way, where I'm like, people, yeah! Woo! And it's so great. And at camp, I'm there all week with them. I eat with them, I sleep with them, well, not with them, but in the same dorms and cabins and all that kind of stuff. It's just so incredibly amazing, and it's a lot of fun, and you get to act crazy, and you lose your voice, and at the end of the week, people start going home. And the camp that was once flourishing with activity is then empty. And you drive home, and you're kind of like, oh, the letdown. After the high, what do you do? What do you do that can help you to keep your focus, to not just throw up your hands and give up? What is it that you do? Everyone experiences those letdowns. The winter blues that you have. A lot of times, people think that during the holiday season there are more suicides, but I was reading a study and was saying, actually, that's a misconception. That during the holiday season, that's not when the highest rate of suicides are, but it's after the holiday season. Because during Christmas, there's hope, and you're looking forward to a new year, there's hope. And then after the new year, and things are the same old, the letdown comes and suicides begin to take place, because nothing has changed after they had their hope, their anticipation, their expectations, and there's the blues, the winter blues that take place. We think that we're the only ones that experience it, but everybody experiences it at some point in time. I mean, the Bible is filled with individuals that had mountaintop experiences that were pretty amazing, just to come down and be knocked down and come back to reality and be discouraged. One of the guys is Moses. Moses, he had led the Israelites out of Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea. There had been all these plagues. They arrived at Mount Sinai, not too far away from the Promised Land. And they're at Mount Sinai. Moses says, let me go up and I'm going to talk with God and get instructions and we'll go from there. And so the people are down below and Moses goes up there and he spends some time with God. I mean, people long to hear the voice of God. It doesn't happen very often that we hear the voice of God. And here Moses was in God's presence, hearing the voice of God. That's an incredibly awesome mountaintop high experience. Amen? Amen. He is up there speaking with God. And God tells him, you got to go back, and there's Joshua, and Joshua says, hey, I hear a noise of celebration, like there was a battle and we won and there was a victory. And Moses says, that's not it. The people down below, the Israelites, in that short time that Moses had been up in the mountain, they forgot all about God. They had forgot about the plagues. They had forgot that God had led them out of Egypt and was leading them to the Promised Land. They forgot all about that, and they had built their calf and began to worship that calf rather than worshiping God. And Moses, who had been on this mountaintop with God, having this incredible moment, comes down from the mountain, and this is what it says in Exodus 32. When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. Talk about the letdown after the high. Wow. Oh, I'm a failure, God. These people have turned their backs on you. They're worshiping an inanimate object there. What have I done wrong? He's not the only one to have a letdown. Move ahead. Elijah, who was a prophet of God. He thought he was the only prophet of God left. He's challenging the prophets of Baal, and he says, hey, listen, there is only one God, the one true God, and I am his prophet, and I worship him, and you need to worship him as well. We're going to have a challenge over who's the real God. We're going to go up to this mount, and we're going to build 2 altars, and we're going to have a sacrifice. And whoever God comes and consumes the sacrifice, that will be the true God. And so there's all these prophets of Baal, and they're dancing around, they're cutting themselves, and all day they're praying for their sacrifice to be consumed. And Elijah's over there making fun of them, saying, hey, maybe you should yell a little bit louder. Maybe he's hard of hearing. Just maybe he went to the bathroom. You need to yell louder. Maybe he went on vacation. And they're going on and on all day. They're dancing around, they're praying, they're cutting themselves, and then it's Elijah's turn. He's like, okay, that's enough. And they pour a bunch of water over the sacrifice, and Elijah prays a prayer. And when he prays the prayer, if you've been in church, you know the answer. Immediately, fire from heaven comes down. It consumes the sacrifice. It consumes the wood on the altar. It consumes all the water that was in the ditch around it. Read the story, you'll find it out. And then he orders that the 400 prophets of Baal get killed because there's only one God. They're serving the false God. And people begin to see that there is only one God, and he is excited. He is on the mountain. He is having a great experience. But then, as he comes down from the mountain, and the drought is over because there's rain coming, and he takes off, he's running, he passes a chariot, he finds out that Jezebel's going to kill him. And what's his life? And in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 3, it says Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judea, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. You ever been there? A mountaintop experience, and then all of a sudden, right afterwards, the disappointment? I just want to die. It's over. I've had enough, Lord, he says. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush fell asleep. Now that's Moses, that's Elijah. Well, the disciples experienced it as well. They had a mountaintop experience. I mean, here, Peter, James, and John, three of the disciples, they go with Jesus up to a mount, and they're believing in Jesus that He is the Messiah, and they go up there, and all of a sudden, as Jesus is up there, He leaves them, and He goes on a little bit further, and as they sit there, they open their eyes, and they look, and there is not only Jesus, with a glow about Him and a glorified body and all this kind of stuff. There's Moses and Elijah. How did they know it was Moses and Elijah? I don't know, but there's Moses and Elijah right there. The two guys we just talked about. Moses representing the Old Testament law, Elijah representing all the prophets, and there is Jesus representing the New Covenant. And they're there, and the disciples, Peter, James, and John, they get all excited. They're like, wow, this is amazing. We're going to build 3 tabernacles here. We're going to worship. This is amazing. We are serving the Messiah. The Messiah is going to come, and He's going to kick some Roman hiney, and they're going to get out of there, and Israel's going to be restored, and we're going to have a good time because Jesus is the Messiah. Look at this. He's even got Moses and Elijah. Can you imagine? Elijah brought down fire from God and destroyed the sacrifices, and Moses, he was there, brought all these plagues. Can you imagine what was happening? Jesus and Moses and Elijah, there's going to be great stuff happen. Woo! And they come down from the mountain with this great anticipation that Jesus is going to be the Messiah. He's going to be like the world dictator, and Israel is going to rule over everything. And Christ will set up His kingdom. He'll be the great king. And they come down from the mountain, and this is what Jesus says to them. In Luke chapter 9, verse 28, Jesus begins to tell them that He's going to be killed, that He's going to be handed over and be betrayed, and that He will die. Whoa, wait a second. What are you talking about? You're the Messiah. You're the new king. You're going to deliver us. You're going to save us. We're going to be set free. We don't get it. And you're saying you're going to die? What a letdown that they had. Those were some major letdowns. But let's move forward to a modern day example. There's a movie out right now called Unbroken. Thank you. Thank you. And it's about Louis Zamperini. Zamperini. I got it right. Good deal. Because I struggle over my words sometimes. Louis Zamperini. Louis Zamperini, was an Olympic athlete, and when the Japanese warplanes bombed Pearl Harbor, Zamperini was 24 years old, and he was already well known. He was one of the youngest athletes to ever compete in the Olympics when he competed in the 1936 Berlin Olympics in running the 5,000 meter race. That's a long race, 5,000 meters. I think 5K is long. That's 5K?
5,000 meters, about a mile and a half.
Oh, okay. That's not so bad then. See, I did great in math. This whole metric system and, give me miles. Give me miles. This whole kilometers and all this stuff. It's still, if you're running, it's still a long ways for me. I'm not a runner. But, see, I didn't say that in the first service. I should have stuck with my notes, then I would have been okay, and it looked like I was an idiot. Anyway, he did really well, but he lacked experience. And in this 5,000 meter race, he's running, and he is in nearly the last place. And in the last lap, all of a sudden, they think he's going to probably lose, come in last or next to last. In the last lap, all of a sudden, he takes off running. And he runs the fastest time for a lap of any individual in the Olympics, which gave him a great credibility and great name. And they said, okay, in 4 years, you're going to come back again. And he ended up going from being in near the end to coming into 8th place. 8th. The movie's not right. Pretty sure 8th place. Anyhow, or 6th place. It was there. Yeah, 8th place. That's what I have. I did a lot of research studying this week, and Anyway, he ended up in 8th place, not the next to last or last that they anticipated that he would be in. And he surpassed the American that was a hopeful. They didn't expect to win, but they thought he would do well, and he ended up passing the American. And so they were going to send him to the next Olympics, but before the next Olympics could ever came around, he ended up being drafted in the war. President Roosevelt, who assured the Americans that they would never fight on foreign soil and never die in a foreign war, ended up drafting people after Japan declared war on the United States. And Zamborini was enlisted into the Army, in the Air Force. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant bombardier on the crew of a B-24, and on May 26, 1943, his crew left Hawaii on a rescue mission for which they didn't return. Their plane ended up crashing in the ocean, and Zamborini, I'm going to start calling him Louis, and that's what I did in the first service. Zamborini and 2 other people survived the crash. The longest time that there had ever been anybody sitting out in the ocean in a raft that survived was 27 days, and they surpassed that. One of the guys that didn't die in the plane crash ended up dying in the raft. And they survived sharks, Japanese gunfire, starvation plagued them. They ended up, at one point in time, Zamborini was just praying. And he's like, God, save us. We don't have water, we're parched, we're just, all sorts of things are happening. We need some fresh water. The one guy that ended up dying in the raft, they had like 8 chocolate bars and a little bit of water, and the first night he got so nervous he ended up eating all the chocolate bars, so they had nothing left. They learned how to kill albatrosses and catch fish and eat that direction, that way. And when the guy did die, they had to let him go. And when Zamborini was praying and saying, God, we need some water, rescue us. If you will give us some water, if you'll save us, I will serve you all the days of my life. I'll go back and I will serve you, God. And sure enough, that night rain came and they were saved. In fact, they ended up surviving 46 days on the raft, out in the water. 46 days in the ocean, without food and water like we have access to. On the 47th day, they approached land. And as they came to the land, they drifted to the Marshall Islands. They were too weak to stand. They crawled ashore and surrendered to their enemy. The movie is different. They crawled ashore and surrendered to their enemies. 4 days, the Japanese carried these guys on their shoulders to a prisoner of war camp. They spent some time there. It was called Execution Island. And they dealt with lice and rats and all sorts of things. And people would die of diseases or starve to death. In fact, the cell that Zamborini was in, he had the names of different individuals that had carved their names into that cell wall and then were later beheaded. Because if they survived the starvation, if they survived the disease, usually they were executed. So he carved his name there in case he didn't survive. Well, after several days or a few weeks there, they took him to a prisoner of war camp. He did survive. They found out that he was an Olympic athlete. And in Japan, they knew more about the Olympics and the runners than anybody else, and they thought this would make great press coverage. And so they got him to do a radio broadcast where President Roosevelt had already sent a letter to his parents saying, "Your son's dead." And in this radio broadcast, for propaganda, it said, "Hey, I'm alive. I'm being treated as well as can be expected. I'm a prisoner of war here." They let that one go, but then they wanted him to do another one. And another one was filled with all sorts of propaganda against the United States, and he refused to do it. While he was in this prisoner of war camp, there was a commander that was there who was known as the Bird. And this guy was horrible. He would abuse these guys every day. and Zambrini was one that they abused every day. He would make them do push-ups in human feces. He would make them lick his shoes clean and all sorts of stuff. And after Louis refused to go on the radio with the propaganda against America, they decided they would send him to an even tougher camp. After days, on a daily basis, not only being beaten, but also being used for medical experiments, given shots and breaking out and bumps all over him and all sorts of things. They sent him to another camp that was up in the mountains. And Louis thought, well, at least I'll be free of this captain, of this army, of this officer the Japanese had. And when he got there, lo and behold, the man had been transferred there as well. And for days, the torture continued. And it came to one point that at the lowest point, Louis was forced by the bird, this Japanese military officer, to hold a large beam over his head. Let me turn to the next picture. You know, this is a guy that's wasted away to nothing. Skin and bones, starving to death. And he's having to hold like this huge railroad tie over his head. And if he was to drop it, he was threatened that he would be shot. And he held it over his head for 37 minutes. Look how skinny those arms are. He's wasted away to virtually nothing. And he's holding this beam over his head for 37 minutes, and out of sheer willpower. The only